Hibulb Conversations welcomes Glen Gobin. Glen shares his background and roles serving the Tulalip Tribes. Hi, and welcome to Hibulb Conversations. I'm Mytyl Hernandez, and today we're here with Glen Gobin. Welcome, Glen.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us, and I'd love to get started on your early life and background. Will you tell us when and where you were born and raised?
Well, I was born in 1956, October 23rd.
Okay.
I was raised at Tulalip, lived predominantly my whole life here with a few off-reservation homestays when I was first married, and then moved back to Tulalip. My parents are Bernie and Dolores Gobin. My grandparents are Joe and Ruth Gobin, and Cecilia Young from my mom's side. She never shared who her father was. She took that with her when she went to the other side, but nonetheless, we all grew up together. Oftentimes, my grandmother, Cecilia, lived in the same home during growing up.
Tell me about your siblings.
My siblings are Steve Gobin and Sherry Gobin, who passed away, Patty Gobin Alva, and Joe Gobin, and myself, and then my younger brother, Tom.
Do you have any favorite early family memories and traditions?
Just always growing up together. Probably a lot of memories of staying up on the Quill Road at what was the old log cabin, which later became the housing site. My grandma lived there, and we spent a lot of time up there. And then living down around Tulalip Bay, where the house actually sat probably about the water side of the health clinic. There were a row of old government homes that were there, and we lived in the very first one, closest to the marina, and grew up there. A lot of family time spent together, growing up on the beach, growing up in a neighborhood where you freely walked wherever you wanted, and the families that lived there, they often looked out for each other's children and made sure that you had something to eat or were not getting into mischief, and often helped us out and probably corrected us along the way as well.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school at Tulalip Elementary, which was quite convenient because you just walked out the back door and up the hill a little ways, and the school was right there.
Perfect.
Went all the way through 6th grade there, and then went to the Marysville Junior High, it was called then, and from there went to Marysville High School and graduated there in 1975. We were actually the last graduating class from that school.
What did you do after high school?
Well, during high school was the start of the process of the Boldt decision, and so in 1974, when that passed, then after high school we continued on fishing. Growing up, we fished all the time, beach seining, all summer long and into the fall. And after the Boldt decision, then we're able to buy a gill net boat and then go out and start gill netting, which was our traditional areas, all the way up to the Canadian border, down to Seattle area. And so we spent a lot of time doing that after high school. And it was quite the learning experience. None of us really knew a lot about any aspect of running a business. We knew we loved to fish, but we didn't know how to work on a motor. We didn't know how to do any of those type trades that it took to operate that, and we didn't have the money to pay for someone that did know.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of hands-on learning, a lot of mistakes made along the way, and the one good thing with that though was there was somebody there to help you. Other fishermen, elders that knew different things and always giving you pointers or helping you along the way. And that was a very valuable teaching that radiated at that time.
What was the big change in fishing and the way tribes operated fishing after the Boldt decision?
Well, pre-Boldt, we always fished, but there were a lot of, I guess, uncertainties that tribes had to deal with because the state tried to implement and interpret what the treaty language meant, and often tried to restrict us to strictly on reservation. So that's why there was a lot of beach seining that took place, and oftentimes in earlier days, the families would move directly to the beach and stay on the beaches all summer long. I was born just when that stopped. So my summers, we didn't move down there any longer. Although I remember every summer when we would go out, my grandpa would gather up what he could find to make a lean-to on the beach, and that was a camp all summer long. We just didn't stay down there any longer. The state would try and restrict those that did try and gill net to strictly being up on what we call the bar, which was the estuary of the Snohomish River, and you had to stay up there in shallow water. So any place where basically the tide went high and dry, the water went high, drained out completely, then that's where you had to fish. And many times I'd hear the elders say that the patrolman would come by and tell them they're out of bounds, they need to get back on reservation or get back in the areas that you know you're supposed to fish. And so there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of animosity at that time. And after the Boldt decision, even when we were beach seining yet, oftentimes sportsmen would come around, run into the nets, rip around inside the nets, try and scare the fish out, run across the winch ropes to try and break them because you had a line that was secured to the beach that you often towed out up to 900 feet out. And so there was a lot of that took place. That continued on for many years after the Boldt decision. And then tribes continued to fight to secure their rights, ultimately winning the Boldt decision, and then had to expand from that to implement what that meant. And so a lot of unknown, a lot of uncertainty taking place, but the leaders at that time knew where they wanted to go. They knew what that treaty meant, they understood what that treaty meant, and they knew how to fight passionately for what they believed in. Oftentimes against highly educated lawyers and advisors and that. And on our side, many were either didn't graduate high school or barely graduated high school. And but they fought for what they believed in, and they did it together. Mm-hmm. They did it working side by side with one another to bring this forward. And if they saw something in one of their co-council members that they had great strength in certain areas, they promoted them to do that work and go down that road to help better the tribe in the future.
Wow. So would you say fishing and having your own boat was your first business?
Yes, really it was. My brother Tom and I, we started fishing up Priest Point at, I think must have been 15, 16. And my dad helped us get a loan to buy this 16-foot aluminum boat. So we were quite green, and we were sent off from the dock. There you go. That's where you go, and just follow what others are doing up there, Uncle Glenn, and see what they're doing and ask for pointers. And so we went up there and we fished a couple summers that way, and it was a great experience.
That's amazing. How did you end up opening other businesses?
After the Boldt decision, the BIA had a guaranteed loan program, so we were able to secure boat loans to buy buy a boat. So at 19 years old, right out of high school, I was in debt for like $45,000, which was an extreme amount of money at the time.
Yeah.
And got this loan from the BIA, and then bought a brand new boat. Again, not knowing a lot about what was needed, what was the design, how things should be laid out. You kind of bought what they gave you. So anyway, we did that, and then after a number of years, it was very apparent that, you know, if you didn't save your money that you made in the summer, you run out of money
in the winter.
And by springtime come, you didn't have any money left. And so after a number of years of fishing and some good seasons, money would get really low. So I figured I had a really good season. I thought, I really want to do something different so I'm not broke at the start of fishing season every year. And so I went out and bought a dump truck. I talked with some of our relatives, elders, uncles, about what would be the best approach. And I ultimately chose something which wasn't necessarily what they recommended, but what I could afford. And so I bought my first dump truck. It was a single axle dump truck, and spent a lot of my winter money in January to buy this truck, and started my business. Again, just like fishing, a lot of trial and error.
Yep.
I'd never sat in a dump truck. I'd never driven a dump truck. And here I was, and I had this dump truck. I figured that because I bought this big truck, everybody would know I bought it, and they would just automatically call me up.
If you buy it, they will come.
Yeah, basically, automatically call me up and ask me to come to work for them. It was far from reality. And growing up in our culture, it was never normal to go out and try and necessarily promote yourself, saying how good you were or what you could accomplish for them. I mean, it was like, and so it was very difficult for me to call someone out of the blue that I did not know in a non-Indian world and say, hey, I've got this dump truck and I'm looking for work.
Yeah.
And so that was quite a challenge. And that took, I bet it took me 10 years to figure that out. So again, like I said, a lot of trial and error, a lot of learning what takes place. Then also came that I'm leaving the reservation and I'm going to work on the outside. I didn't know anything about licenses. I didn't know anything about tonnage. I didn't know what I needed for any of that. So we had to learn the trial and error process, learn what was needed to operate a business.
So you started with one dump truck.
Yep.
And then what did it turn into?
Along the way with the one dump truck, we bought a bigger one, and then I bought a backhoe, thinking, okay, I want to get into this other aspect, and I financed this backhoe for like 3 years, I think it was. I'd paid for the backhoe before I ever went to work with it, because number one, I'd never run any equipment before.
Yeah.
And so, again, on the job type stuff when I was driving dump truck, so to get a job, sometimes they say, okay, we need you to haul this dirt over here, the pile's over there, and you're gonna have to load yourself.
Yeah.
Well, and they'll say, can you run this loader? And of course I had to make my abilities sound better, and I would say yes. And so we'd have to figure out how to run these loaders, whether that was a track loader, a rubber tire loader, or a backhoe loader, or an excavator.
Yeah.
And so along the way, I learned how to run a number of pieces of equipment, and I might have broke one or two sideboards along the way, but we managed that. And then I buy a backhoe. I was going to start doing my own type work. Took a long time to get that started, but ultimately started doing little odd jobs here and there. And then even through the tribe then, got opportunities as my experience grew to start take on different jobs for the tribe, and so it just grew from there.
And how long did the business run?
The business was licensed until about 2011, but I got reelected to tribal council in 2005, and the workload on tribal council had grown so much that I wasn't able to pay attention to the business like I used to.
Yeah.
And my wife, she would keep the trucks running the best she could. And then the driver situation started to change. So I would say that from 2005 to 2011, basically the trucks started to go into a slow mothball operation. The equipment, same thing, it basically all sat there. And then in 2010, I believe, I sold the dump trucks. And in 2011, I sold all the rest of the equipment except a couple handy pieces like my backhoe.
Will you tell me about your own family?
Well, out of high school, I graduated in 75. In about 1977, I married Karen Martin, was her maiden name. And we've been together since 1977. And in 1979, had our first child, Kendra. Then came Nick and Cecilia and Andrew. And I will thank the tribe because they made it all the way through school, and the tribe funded them all four to go to college. So they all came out with degrees.
Yep. And you've got grandchildren?
I have 7 grandchildren now. 2 were born just this last early December, about 9 days apart, I think. So I've got Weston, Jackson, and Evelyn, who are Nick and his wife Liz's children. And I have Elias, Harlan, and now Stolza, who is Andrew's children. Yeah. And I have Kendra, who had Aiden, and so I think that adds up to 7.
I think so too. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing your background with us. Really enjoyed learning about your early life. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll hear about how you became involved with tribal service. We'll be right back with more Hibulb Conversations.
Welcome to the Hibulb Cultural Center and Natural History Preserve, where you'll discover the journey of the Tulalip Tribes. Our interactive displays introduce you to the legacy of the Tulalip people told in our words and voices. A journey for all to experience.
Welcome back to Hibulb Conversations. Today's guest is Glen Gobin. Welcome back. Tell me what started your transition from being a business owner to working for the people.
Well, I think it's not that simple.
Okay.
It's I grew up in a family where my father was a tribal leader, and my mom worked for the tribe from early on. And oftentimes, just our whole life of growing up, tribal politics were talked about. And when I say politics, it's mostly businesses, opportunities, decisions, how to go forward, ways to help our people. And so we grew up in that type of atmosphere, always on the peripheral, not knowing you were learning anything, but just hearing things growing up from time to time. And then I think after I turned 21, I started joining some of the tribe's committees. I served early on was a 30-year lease review committee where the membership was not happy with the 30-year leases and what was happening after reappraisal in and around the bay and the prepayment options that were offered in that. So I served on a committee there, and I think there was a lot learning that came at that time, because there were a lot of tribal elders that were there on those committees as well. And so you got to sit in and hear their thought processes, the values, also the stories when they would just sit around and talk at those times about different things. And so it was a great experience to do that. And so throughout that time, I served on that 30-year lease review committee. We built the bingo in 1983, I believe it was. And there was some management issues at the time. And then the tribe had a Tulalip entertainment review committee. And so he came in, tried to understand, well, what transpired with the management that was in place there, and how do we deal with this going forward? And so got to learn in that process. And when I say you had elders there, you had like Wayne Williams. Virginia was often on Virginia Carpenter, on many of the committees I served with as well. And there was a lot of experience that came in. Stan Jones Jr., sometimes my mom sat on some of those committees and reviewing finance aspect. But there were many others. Arnold McKay. There was just a lot of elders that cared about what was happening with the tribe, and they'd get involved and give their time to come forward and try and understand and keep the tribal values as part of the decision-making process, and standing up for what was right and what was ethical, and how to do this best way. Because it was always the intent through all these committees, it was about next generations, and what are we passing on, what are we teaching, and how we're doing those things. So again, so I served there. I served on the Fish Commission for many years. I served on the Planning Commission for many years. I served on the Gaming Commission prior to getting elected the first time in 1996. And so there was a lot of hands-on life experience learning along the way from a lot of very respected tribal leaders, tribal members that always stood up in the community, that volunteered and helped in many different ways. And so prior to 1996, I'd ran for council maybe 3 or 4 times. Maybe, I'm trying to recall. I remember one time though I ran and my dad was running, and he beat me like by 2 or 3 votes, and I was totally happy with that, So, I finally I kept trying, and then in '96 I tried again and got elected, and I served from '96 to '99, and it was a very eye-opening experience. And when I say that, it was about the massive amount of responsibility that came with that position, and sometimes having to make decisions that maybe you not personally liked, but you knew were the decisions which were right for the tribe to move forward. So I served, my first term was 3 years. I mean, there was a lot going on. I had my business that was still going on, and so I ran for re-election, and I would say at best half-heartedly re-election, and I think I lost by 3 votes, so I prayed about it. It says, God will lead me where I need to be. And so I went off in a different direction, got more back into my business, and and developed that further. So, and then from that, in that time off, then there were opportunities to do other construction projects. We were a major subcontractor when the bingo was moved and built up there. We were a general contractor, joint ventured with somebody. We built the strip mall. And then I joint ventured with a different company that I went out and searched out, which was quite an interesting process, because I talked to a number of general contractors, and basically what they wanted was a token Indian. to try and get the job, and I wouldn't work with them. I found someone that listened to what I said, what I could help with, what I bring to the table, and but I want to be a part of it. I don't want to stand in the corner and collect a paycheck.
Right.
You know, and so I found a contractor that I got comfortable with, which was Mortensen, and we ultimately got selected through an interview process to build the new what was the new casino at the time, the big casino.
The big house.
So, and that was another eye-opening learning experience, because sometimes it was difficult for me, because it was almost like sometimes I felt like I was the tribe's owner's rep at the same time being the contractor.
Yeah.
And say, no, tribe's not going to accept this. We're not doing this. And then worked hard and promoted to create tribal opportunity, because I knew what it meant to be a contractor, and all the pitfalls and obstacles that we go up against, and created opportunities for other tribal members to start to build their businesses and grow from that, and created employment opportunities in a way that were meaningful. Again, we'd be sitting in meetings and telling them, well, you guys, you're going to need 15% of your workforce, let's say, going to be here. But it has to be meaningful jobs, and it has to be well-paying jobs. It doesn't mean that you're going to give them a broom and make them stand on the offside, and that's what's going to happen. We want every one of them to feel like they took part in this job in a meaningful way, so when they get done, they walk away and say, I was part of that. I built that. I worked on that.
Yeah.
And we'd tell the contractor, and then the subcontractor, and we'd say, and if you can't live by that, you can't do that in a meaningful way, then don't bother applying, submitting a bid, because we will not accept it. And so it worked really good. But and I say that we did that, but the reality, when I think about all these things, it was the whole team that was there. It was the tribal council that was in place. It was the business development people like John McCoy and Peter Mills and my brother Steve that were in place. And there was a whole team of people be sitting around this room, and we'd make decisions and make recommendations, and the reason we're making recommendations. I'm very proud of the work that we did there. Not just that I can say that, oh, we built that. I'm proud of the work that we did of creating so many opportunities for tribal members, Native American businesses to come and participate on that job. And I personally feel that a lot of the growth that we see in the businesses that are out there today are as a result of that project on what could be done if you really mean it. Yeah. And if you really try and implement something meaningful for Native Americans to get to work, in particular Tulalip tribal members.
So you had served on the board and a bunch of committees, went back to work with your business, build a bunch of businesses and big projects, and then what did you do?
I got asked to run for board again, and actually it was Panoke. I said, well, I'm not. And I said, don't take this the wrong way. I'm not running if you're running. I mean, if you're running, I'm going to support you. But if you're not running, and he'd say, no, I'm not running. I want you to run. And so I said, well, I suppose I could.
Twisted your arm?
Well, because I was still in the middle of a lot of work at that time. So when I got elected, it was kind of a little bit difficult, because we were just finishing the job for the PUD substation on 88th Street. So I had to try and get that finished while sitting on tribal council, and then sitting on Quilceda Village Council. You know, so it was really trying to keep arm's length from not being involved in anything. And then I think the other project we were doing was we were clearing the property for the Elders Village above the marina. And so we had to get that project finished, and I think we ultimately got those done about July or something. So it was like about 4 years, or 4 months maybe, of sitting on council of trying to get these finished up, but I never did any more work after that.
Yeah.
Just finished up the existing contracts. And then I served from then, now I got to get these straight, maybe till about 2005 to, let's say, 2017 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then was off for a year, I think it was. And then hemmed and hawed about running again. Then I got elected again for another 3 years. And then now I've been off for like 2 years.
You've decided to retire?
Well, I haven't. Let's say I don't receive a paycheck any longer for some of the work I do.
Volunteering?
I still participate where I can. I'm still very involved in natural resource issues, fisheries issues. I serve on the Salmon Defense Board. I am the co-chair of the Billy Frank Salmon Coalition, and so I work within those aspects. And then when called to speak at different times, I'll go and attend and share what knowledge I have.
Wow, we appreciate it, and we appreciate you being here and sharing your life's work with us. We'll take a short break, and we'll be back with more Hibulb Conversations.
Hibulb Cultural Center Gift Shop. Discover something special and shop our unique collection of jewelry, art, home decor, apparel, books, and children's items. Choose from unique merchandise and handcrafted items with something for everyone at the Hibulb Cultural Center.
Welcome back to Hibulb Conversation. Today's guest is Glen Gobin. Glen, we talked about your service on the board. We talked about the importance of business in the community. You do so much more for the community than work in business and provide opportunities. You work a lot with the culture as well. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Again, another aspect of growing up, there was always teachings that were taking place. And I feel very fortunate at times to be born at a time when many things were still kind of done an old way, and changes that I've seen since getting older. And our elders would talk about, being humble, walk in a humble way, stand up for your people, stay together, stand together. And it gets to be a challenge as we go forward here today in the world of social media and all the access to the outside world, how we continue to bring those forward in a good way that still remain a Stahob's way, a Tulalip way, without mixing and blending other aspects of culture. So I feel very fortunate that I was around at a time to be taught by Harriet Shelton Dover, Daisy Williams, Daisy Freiberg, Molly Hatch, elders that gathered up people early and started to share teachings that they had, that they could recall. And I value them greatly because their parents, their grandparents would have taught them, and they would have been there at treaty times. And so the teachings were still very fresh that were coming forward and not blurred by outside influence in any way. And I think that it's important that we get back to those core teachings, those core values going forward from here. And so early on, we were gathered up, exposed to different aspects. And sometimes I feel almost ashamed to say it, but when we first picked up a drum and the elders were trying to teach us, we'd laugh. Well, I can't do that. I don't do that. But yet you were drawn to the beat of the drum regardless. You were drawn to that beat of the drum to come forward. And ultimately, we were taught dances. We were taught songs. And they were not taught in a traditional way. Mm-hmm. You listened. And you were made to listen. And you picked that teaching up from that aspect. That we didn't necessarily practice, say, no, you got it wrong, or this. When they started the song, you listened and you joined in, and when the time was right, then you started singing. But you learned how to sing first before you learned how to drum. And so they wanted your voices to come forward together. And again, it's a core value that the teachings were. It was always together. It was always, we were all together,
Right.
together. And again, you apply that across the board through time, and what has given us the greatest strength as a people, as a Snohomish people, as a Tulalip people, is we've done this growth together. And it's becoming more and more of a struggle of how we stay together to make the decisions for the next generations without getting so divided at times. So.
You also serve on the Tulalip Foundation. Can you tell me about that?
I serve on the Tulalip Foundation, firstly, because when we formed the foundation at the board level, we had to pass a number of ordinances, resolutions, different things to get the foundation established. And then establishing the first one was predominantly board members assigned to do this work. And it's evolved now more to bring others to get involved. But there's still 2 tribal board member positions that serve on the foundation, which ultimately come back and report to the whole board. It started out as a way to pass through some grant funds that would come through, or donation funds that would come through, and then it is growing more and more to a local charity that provides for what would I call the neighborhood needs of nonprofit giving, helping not just large opportunities, but small opportunities. And the small opportunities are what are the core values of what our people were. I mean, for those of my generation to think back and remember the thrift shop underneath the old dining hall, where community members came together, and there you could go get clothes and you could get shoes, different things. Those type of little core community opportunities that were there. Now here we are in finding those same ways, and you have people that do sewing and make blankets for veterans. Those little things have a lot of meaning. They have a lot of value strength that come with those. So to me, it's a great opportunity to sit and continue to promote that. And again, getting as old as I am, still trying to keep the core values of who we are intact, while still doing business type opportunities in mainstream America.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for our youth today?
Listen to your elders.
I knew you were going to say that. I did.
That's what we were always taught. Listen to your elders.
Yep.
Find ways to help your tribe. Find ways to take care of yourself. But don't forget, we all have a responsibility to our tribe, to our people, to help our next generations. I sit in this room here that we're doing this interview. I look at these pictures, and they're all my childhood memories of walking on every aspect of these beaches around here, and growing up here. And when I started out earlier, I said about the ability to walk around this whole bay growing up and feel safe and secure. I don't know if that's the same feeling today, right. But we did it before because we looked out for one another. And so I do really think that is listen to your elders. Take the time to understand. When our elders said, know who you are. Knowing who you are means knowing what your family, where you come from, be grounded in where you're at, but know your history. Understand the history and the values that come with that, and understand the responsibility of what that means to pass that history on. Not to change or reinterpret what was there, but our elders have a history and of how they fought for where we are today, how they made decisions to help our people, how they exercise sovereignty, how they work together, and keep those values in the forefront. Like Big Shot always said, he gives the kindling analysis. As a single piece of kindling, you can break it over your knee, snap it quite easily. But if you bundle those all together is the important word, you can't break it. It won't move. It won't budge. And I think it's a great analogy when you talk about our people and the strength that we've had in the past. And I pray that we continue going forward about together, to work together, to help one another. And we all know we still have to take care of ourselves as well. But our future depends on our ability to do this together. And it's getting more and more divided. But in all reality, it's getting more and more divided across this nation.
Yep.
So I guess that would be my advice.
That's great advice. I'd love to have you back to talk about salmon ceremony and elders and culture in our community. Will you come back soon?
You don't want to talk about fishing?
I'll
No,
talk more
just
about
kidding.
fishing.
No, I'd love to.
We can even talk more about dump trucks. Yeah.
I have a lot of great memories, and I cherish them greatly. So I would love to share what I recall.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing everything that you have. It's been wonderful to sit with you.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for watching Hibulb Conversations. I'm Mytyl Hernandez. Until next time.